Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission here is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy a cup of coffee. And today is all about marketing. If you've had any interest in marketing, understanding how to improve your messaging for your business, how to get that messaging to more people, well, this episode is for you. Our guest today is Evan Knox. He's based out of Georgia, near the Atlanta area, and he runs a company called Caffeine Marketing. He's going to be sharing with us some of the aspects of the story brand framework and how it applies to marketing small businesses. It's definitely one you're going to want to take notes on, so get ready, grab a cup of coffee, and join us for the conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
Well, Evan, thank you very much for being here today. We are excited to have you as a guest. Remote, we're social distancing right now, so
yeah, totally.
we're trying to keep at least 6 feet away from each other, but we're more like a couple hundred miles from each other right now, I guess.
Yeah.
You're in the Atlanta area, Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, that's correct. Specifically like the Buckhead, Chastain Park area, but yeah, it's all Atlanta. So.
It's Georgia. We'll just say Georgia.
Yeah, basically.
So Evan reached out to me on LinkedIn at some point. We got connected, and I think we were actually talking about podcasting. But through the conversation, decided we were going to do a podcast together. So here we are. Now we appreciate you being here, but before we get started, 5 rapid fire questions, randomly selected, just to get to know you a little better. Under your skin,
Great.
Get to know you a little better, whichever, with unknown point values just to throw you off a little bit. So are you ready?
Yep, let's go.
If you could eliminate one thing from your daily routine, what would it be and why?
Changing diapers.
Changing diapers. Now, why would you say that, Evan?
It's not my favorite. Honestly, my wife does most of it, but when I do have to, it's not my favorite. So what you would think for a diaper, you know?
So how old is your child?
His name is Titan. And he's 8 months old as of this recording.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. If you were stranded on a desert island, what 3 items would you want to have with you?
Oh, this is great. A sat phone, because that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yep. Some sort of knife or multi-tool, and 50 gallons of fresh water.
Wow. You've thought through this before.
I honestly, that was it. I mean, I was like just on the spot.
Very, very practical. Very practical.
Yeah.
Communication device, something to be able to have a tool and fresh water. Got it. If you could magically become fluent in any language, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I want to say in Finland, whatever they speak in Finland.
Finnish.
I have a friend.
Is it Finnish?
Finnish. Yes, I think it's Finnish. It's the most beautiful language you've ever heard. I mean, it sounds like elves are speaking it. It's incredible. So you should go look it up. Yeah.
Elves. Like Santa
Like,
elves?
No. Like not Star Wars. Lord of the Rings. I got those two mixed up. Very different. But yeah, it's amazing. Like everybody's listening should pause, Google it, and then come back.
All right.
Because it's really cool. Although I feel like Spanish would be a lot more practical right now, but
Yeah, I think I would go with French. Very impractical, but just seemed like it would be something fun.
Yeah.
What is the best advice that you've ever heard?
I don't know why, but my grandfather's advice to me when I first started in sales, and I'm talking like 12 years old, he said, Evan, people like to talk about themselves, so ask them questions about them.
Good advice. Good advice.
Yeah.
And then number 5, last question. Do you collect anything?
Yes, but it's really not. Okay, my wife and I are both minimalist.
All right.
I mean, like pretty true minimalism.
Okay.
Like we have a house or like an apartment, whatever.
Sure.
But like anyway, but what I collect is I have a collection on Auto Trader. So I've got like the Auto Trader app.
Okay.
And I've got a top 50 cars that just in case my car broke down, I would buy right now. So everything from like a Ford Raptor to like a Nissan Leaf. Yeah, just a bunch of random stuff.
Random collection of cars.
Collect. Yeah, but I don't actually own them. It's all like a escapism, probably.
Gotcha. Have you ever heard of Matt Diavelli?
Mm-hmm. I have, yeah.
Yeah. He's a minimalist.
He is. For those who don't know, he's basically a guy on YouTube who documents his journey in minimalism and other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but he's a great filmmaker.
Yeah, he is. Very good. Very good. Cool. Well, that wraps up Rapid Fire. 5 randomly selected questions. We'll give you a score of 863. So congratulations.
All right.
Hi, I'm Sam Gray with Loc-Doc Security, and we want to give you 3 ways to reduce touch points in your office. Tip number 1 is keeping interior doors that are not a security risk open. One way you can accomplish this is a door closer with a hold open arm. Tip number 2 is you can consider switching to a motion activated light or a smart switch. Tip number 3 is using automatic door openers for your high traffic interior and exterior doors. You can do that by using Brivo Mobile Pass or motion activated buttons.
Well, let's get into the topic of conversation today. Tell us a little bit about your business. It's called Caffeine Marketing, and what you guys do and what it's all about.
Yeah, totally. So we make marketing profitable for small companies doing less than $25 million a year in annual revenue. The actual nuts and bolts of that is we use a 7-part framework called StoryBrand to clarify our clients' messaging. And then we actually, make marketing collateral in the form of websites or social media advertisements, or any other sort of marketing that's going to be profitable to grow their company.
So helping companies that are under $25 million in annual revenue. So you're really focused in on that small to medium market. And just why have you chosen that path?
It starts for me when I first got into business, and sales really is my grandfather and my dad were both business owners and entrepreneurs. My grandfather owned a jewelry store here in Atlanta. I actually was on a call with a potential client 2-3 days ago, and he was telling me that when he first started he's another jewelry store, whatever, and he's doing a couple $1 million a year. But he told me that when he first moved to Atlanta, everyone wanted to work for my grandfather. He was the most well-known, most well-renowned jeweler in Atlanta. And so I grew up with that kind of being normal. And then my dad was also in the same jewelry space, and he basically did the B2B side, which was wholesale diamonds for other jewelry stores and my grandfather's. So I grew up around business owners, entrepreneurs. And when I started Caffeine, I really wanted to help people like them. Unfortunately, my dad had already passed by the time I started Caffeine, and he had passed a few months before that. And my grandfather had just recently retired. So basically, here I am with this tenderness in my heart towards small business owners and entrepreneurs. But yet, the people I love most, I can't help them right now. And so I thought, I can't help my grandfather and my dad, but I can help other business owners out there. So, and honestly, there's a bit of scale that we probably couldn't accommodate for a really large enterprise company. So it's twofold. One is it connects with me personally, and I feel like we're making a difference.
That's awesome. And as far as StoryBrand goes, if people are unfamiliar with StoryBrand, a little context to what it is. We've kind of gone through the process a little bit here. We've read the book, very familiar with Donald Miller, but give us a little bit of kind of your insight as to how StoryBrand is impacting businesses from being able to share their story.
Yeah, totally. So at a really high level, StoryBrand is a 7-part framework created by this guy named Donald Miller, and it uses the principles of story in order to clarify a company or a brand's messaging so that customers actually listen. And why that's so important is that when we're communicating information to people, often it's when they're, they go onto our website, our company's website, or you're starting to tell somebody about your business, you're basically handing them bowling balls while they're on a treadmill. And so if you don't give people very timely information in a way that they're going to be able to process, their brain is going to basically shut you off because your brain is trying to survive and thrive as well as consume calories. So it's a framework that's proven using the 7 principles of story in order to communicate to your customers in a way that they'll actually pay attention, because we get so many messages throughout the day, marketing messages that is, And in order to really cut through the noise, your message has to speak directly to the customer, and you can't be the hero of the story. You have to play the guy.
I was sitting at a restaurant with a good friend of mine several years ago, and he was describing this theory to me about the power of knowledge, or the curse of knowledge, I guess. I don't remember what it's referred to as. What is the official thing that
I think it would be the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge.
Yeah.
But basically, the concept of as a business owner or operator or anybody inside of an industry, you have a level of knowledge of intricacy of that business or that industry, and so you kind of naturally develop a language associated with that, the way that you talk to people. And he was giving me this entire description. So, and if you have some more insight on it, it'd be great to hear. But the way he was describing it to me was so very intriguing, and it really kind of broke my brain when it came to the way that we communicate with our customers, because there's a lot of industry terms that we have used for forever, and when it came down to it, when you talk to your everyday consumer, our customer base, the people that we were dealing with, they were just nodding and saying, "Yeah, it sounds great," but they actually weren't connecting with the message that we were trying to communicate. Therefore, it was almost useless to share it because we weren't sharing it correctly. How have you seen that to come into play? And maybe you can explain it a little more than what I just did, but it was a very interesting introduction that he gave me many years ago. Just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation.
Yeah. So the curse of knowledge, when it relates to business and story branding and your messaging, is that often we think that we're communicating, because we know, if let's say you're an expert in the field, if I'm going to talk marketing with you, I may not be a 10 out of 10 marketing knowledge, but I'm pretty far up there. And if you're an expert in your field, you're probably really high up in your field specifically too. And so if you're talking to a potential client or a customer, you know that you can't speak all the lingo. Like earlier today, I was on a call with some network engineers. Pretty much anything that they say to me, it's going to go above my head. And so they're trying to dumb it down and explain it to me in a way that I actually understand. And they're communicating at a 5. So like, let's say that they're the best, they're, very experienced in this. They're communicating at a level 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And they know they're trying to dumb it down and, help me understand it, but they're really only getting to a 5 or a 6. And so if we're trying to talk to our customers and we're explaining things at a 5 and a 6, we're missing on sales because often people make buying decisions at levels 1 and 2. And a great example of the curse of knowledge, and really it's hard to tell even when you know things that you just take for granted that and your customers don't know. And so yesterday I was working with a private equity group, and they were kind of a unique private equity group in that they provide lending specifically to in times like, the current climate of the financial world right now, when people are struggling for whatever reason and they need temporary lending, these guys specialize in that. But I'm not kidding you. I feel like I'm a pretty smart guy. I may not be the smartest out there, but I probably had 3 or 4 calls with them before I finally understood what they did. And it took me so long. And so finally I was able to then communicate or translate what they have, at a 9 or a 10. And they were trying to dumb it down for me to like a 5 or a 6. And I was able to help them communicate it to a 1 or a 2, because they're so close to their own business and their own company, they can't communicate clearly because they can't even see, in front of their own eyes.
No,
really.
It's a very interesting thing. Once you're made aware of it, then it's obviously hard to ignore it. But it can happen very, very quickly, and you're like, wow, okay, I have been confusing people or have been talking so complicated that they basically just nod and walk away because they don't want to have the conversation anymore. And I'm like, man, they really got it. But I just was confusing the conversation. So after I had this conversation with him and he explained this curse of knowledge to me, it really kind of made us step back into our business and go, okay, how are we doing this? How are we not translating this message well to our customers? And so it forced us to go into a process of learning. It was probably maybe a month later. I was actually in, where was I at that time? I'm going to say California. I think I was in California at the time, and an industry friend of mine walked up to me in a hotel lobby and handed me a copy of the book Story Brand from Donald Miller. And he said, "Hey, I think you might enjoy this." And I was like, what in the world? This is so weird. I've never heard of this guy before, never heard of this process before. But within about a month apart, I had a guy in a restaurant telling me about the curse of knowledge and explaining to me who Donald Miller was. And then all of a sudden I've got this book. And so I dove into it because it intrigued me. I was like, this is not coincidence. So I need to really kind of dive into this. But that story philosophy and the simplicity of bringing that to your business is incredible. And I think it's something that small business owners overlook a lot. And so somebody like yourself can come in and really help to open up your eyes to say, hey, how can this message be translated? And I want to tell you this, Evan, I don't know how much you've dealt with this on the other side, but sitting in my seat, I've dealt with so many people that come through our doors trying to sell us marketing, trying to sell us advertising, and trying to help us get our message out to our customers. And they're so off base from what we actually are trying to communicate. And what we're trying to communicate may not actually be what needs to be communicated, but they're so far the other direction, trying to communicate in this box that they've already predetermined. And so to that point, and the reason I bring that up is I think that it's interesting when you start talking about marketing and consulting from a marketing standpoint. I think a lot of small business owners are very standoffish about it because they've been forced this kind of advertising mantra down the line. What's different between that and with what you bring to the table?
You know, when I first started Caffeine, we originally started off as specializing in social media marketing. And very quickly, I got to the point, I'm working with these entrepreneurs day to day. And like I said before, like this is a heart thing for me. This is not just hey, this is a fun business. I'm going to do this, whatever to make money. Like this connects to my heart and, really my family. So as I looked at that and I'm working with these small business owners, I'm like, you know what they really actually need is they need this marketing to be profitable. They don't need social media. They might, but like that's not always what they need. Each business is unique in their actual marketing funnel and sales funnel. And so a lot of people, and honestly, I probably get a few emails a day from another agency. And I'm not trying to put down anyone else out there, but there are a lot of people that have, this is what we sell, and they're just going to sell that service. They're not looking out for the consumer or the client. This is just the cookie cutter thing that they have. And so we always start with a strategy session first. So, and again, this is not a pitch, but in our first call is a strategy session. So like we know it's the intro. We get to know your business. We get to know your annual revenue. We get to know your current sales funnel and your current sales process. And what products or services do we actually want to grow? And so like we get to know your business in depth, and then we custom design a solution for you. And then it's ultimately up to you if you want to, have us execute that for you. So it all starts with strategy in the beginning. And we all at Caffeine, I'm like, we will turn down people. We turn down a couple of people a year because our marketing, like whatever we do for them is not going to be profitable. Like I can't see it in their business plan when this is going to make sense. So we don't work with them. But most people out there just sell a service. But I think there's a growing trend of other agencies that are, and a lot of store brand guys are this way. They really are trying to make marketing profitable for their clients.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit Loc-Doc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. I want to chat a little bit about an understanding of clarification. I think you just kind of started down this path, clarification of marketing and messaging, I guess, versus the vehicle, which is the social media or however it is, print, whatever that you're going to bring that to the table. But just an understanding of, I think a lot of people misconstrue marketing with social media. And I think one of the things that somebody like yourself or what the StoryBrand framework does is it really it disregards all of the vehicles, the ways that you're going to push the information out, and it makes you think through the actual message that you're going to try to communicate. And from that, then you can apply it and figure out the different ways that you need to place that or where it needs to go.
Let's start off with defining what marketing is, and then let's go into branding, because in my opinion, I feel like branding and marketing are so intimately connected, but at the same time, they're different. And so I think it's helpful to understand the two of them. And just like you were saying, we can never start with the actual vehicle itself. We should start with the strategy first. So we start with the strategy, and it's like the first part in your marketing should be your strategy, just like the first part in your branding should be messaging. So if we were to define marketing very simply, it's brand awareness, consideration, and conversion. A lot of people can make it more complicated than that. There's plenty of other ways to define it. But if we're going to just make it really simple, it's those three buckets. And so think of them like a funnel. And brand awareness basically is the point in which somebody becomes aware of your brand. They can never buy your product or service if they don't know you exist. So step one is just make them aware of you. Now, there's 1,000 different vehicles to do that. We would suggest different things for different businesses. Like for some businesses, LinkedIn LinkedIn ads might make sense. For others, Facebook advertising or YouTube advertising. And maybe a billboard. It's not always the first option, but like whatever it is, they're aware of them. And then we design systems that are called a sales funnel. So marketing funnel encompasses a sales funnel. So within that is we design a sales funnel that has some sort of lead gen on your website and a follow-up sequence in order to actually convert visitors into customers or clients. So the brand awareness phase, the consideration phase, and the goal of the consideration phase is to turn people who are aware of your brand, to remind them of your brand so that they actually want to convert into that, point of that you want them to be, which is a client or a customer. So that's the marketing side. And then just real quick, the branding side, I define branding as how you make someone feel. So, you can think of that personally as well. Like what's it like to be on the other side of you? But when I think of companies, ultimately your branding is how you're making other people feel. So, and I think that starts chiefly not with logos and colors, but it starts with your messaging, because ultimately you want your business to be the guide and not the hero. You don't want to make it all about you, but establish authority when you can. And earlier you were mentioning all these industry terms. What I think, this is my perception, is a lot of business owners use those terms because they want to appear competent. But in reality, you're just confusing your customers. There's other ways to appear competent and establish authority with your potential clients or customers besides just throwing around industry slang.
And I'll tell you this, just from the process, just a snippet of what you just said, that you want to be the guide and not the hero. So in order to understand that comment, you have to understand the 7-part framework of story brand and how that builds into that. But as a business, you're naturally drawn to just the natural inclination is to be the hero. That is the way that everybody thinks. I guess. Let me not use a definitive. A vast majority of people probably naturally fall into that process. And to break that and to flip it around and say, hold on, no, you need to be the guide to help them become the hero, it's a hard thing to reconcile in your mind, because when you start to walk through the process, you naturally go back to the other way. And it's a very complicated thing to process, but once you get it, then it changes the way that you see everything, especially from a marketing and a branding standpoint, because the message that you're communicating now has changed from we're here to fix all your problems to we're here to help you fix your problems, which is a completely different mindset.
Yeah, that's great. I think when I'm trying to teach customers or teach clients this, basically the whole goal is not to make yourself look awesome. Most people wake up and they're the hero of their own story. And so when you say, hey, I'm the hero too. I'm awesome. We're amazing. We've done so many things for all these people, whatever. And you go above and beyond it and you make yourself the hero of your own messaging. Customers don't align with that. They don't connect to you because they're ultimately not looking for another hero. That's a turnoff. They're looking for a guide. They're looking for the Obi-Wan Kenobi or the Yoda to help Luke Skywalker, win the day. So, or Haymitch in the Hunger Games. Both of those are just, movie examples of how screenwriters essentially pull this other character into the story, which we as companies should play in order to help the hero get what they really want and win the day.
Yeah, it's funny whenever that example came about, talking about the framework of a story, and when you read it and you process it, then you can't watch a movie the same way. You can't watch a television show the same way because it's all like, Okay, here we go. Now here comes the guide. But it really is, it changes the way that you operate as a business because it isn't, I'll tell you this, when we were made aware of that philosophy and started to try to apply it into our business, it didn't just change our messaging, it changed our behaviors.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing because once you started to change your behaviors and, well, we're not coming here to save the day, we're coming in here to help you be the hero and save the day, then everything just kind of changes in regard to that. So I would imagine that's kind of major step number one when you're dealing with a client is to kind of get through that process because if they can't grasp that, then it's going to be hard for them to implement the rest of it. And
I mean, ultimately, it's a process. None of us are perfect. There's so many times where I fall into it personally, and I might realize, oh my gosh, like I'm being the hero of my own story at home. It's like, no, I'm there. Let's bring it in the home, right? I come home as the husband and dad. I'm there to serve my family, and I want my wife to feel like she's the hero, and I just want to support her. So I think it's applicable across every area of life. Once you really start to learn it.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. If this information has been helpful to you, or you just really kind of like our theme song, can you help us out by rating us on whatever app you're using? And if you get really fancy, how about sharing a screenshot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? Okay, enough of all this. Let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, most definitely. And then as you were mentioning before, kind of how you take that message and carry it out is something that from a practical sense, and this is something, again, just from a small business mindset that you want to understand that you can be very strategic about this. And this has been a conversation we've been having with other business owners across the country, but understanding it can be very overwhelming. Okay, I've just now figured out kind of my messaging, and now, there's the Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. Which one do I need to be on? Oh, and my website needs to be fixed, and I don't have a good follow path to get conversions and lead generation and all that stuff. And so now I'm just overwhelmed, overloaded. And what do I do next?
Yeah. And a lot of people get in paralysis. And it's really sad. It's really sad because these people, they have great businesses. They've grit and hard work has got them to the place where they're at today. But that's not going to take them to the place where they really want to be. Like they need marketing that actually is profitable and that it works. But like you said, it's almost like a paralysis. Like people get overwhelmed. I'm not sure where to start. And I really feel for a lot of these business owners that have been burned or turned off by marketing people because it's hard. I mean, like SEO, I spent probably 6 months really trying to learn SEO, and we don't really offer that as a service because it's just a long-term thing. Like a client has to know it's 6 months before you see any return on investment on this. Yeah. Sometimes some people might argue that, but they probably would. But to me, the whole thing felt like snake oil. Like, I'm like, I don't feel good about selling this. Like I looked at other agencies and I'm like, what are you doing? Honestly, like, what are you actually doing? Like, tell me, like, what are you supplying to them? And so I feel them. That's all I have to say. It's not to say all SEO people are bad. There's some great people who work on SEO, but anyway.
Well, I would imagine that it's not necessarily just about the fact of SEO. SEO is one of the pillars in an entire strategy. And that is the thing that I feel like a lot of people get sidetracked on is there's not just one thing that's going to work, but it is a mixture. It's a formula of a lot. And I don't want to be vague, but I'm just trying to understand that in the same sense, a lot of people think that Facebook and social media is the only way to drive business to your drive awareness to your business. And that's just part of the process. If they don't have somewhere to go to actually close the transaction, then it doesn't follow or close that whole loop.
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple examples of that. So like, one's kind of, I'll say the funny one for a second if I can remember it. But like for e-commerce, right? Very simple. So one of our holdings with like me and a couple of partners is like we sell window film, right? So it's like an e-commerce store. It's all window film. Generally, the way that people hear about us is two ways. Is one through paid advertising, and paid advertising could be, Google ad. It could be a Facebook ad, whichever. And the other one is Pinterest. So we get a lot of organic discovery on Pinterest, and that is that brand awareness part, right? So I'm just basically fleshing out this whole funnel again as an example for depending on what type of business you are. And then we have retargeting campaigns. So then we got Facebook retargeting campaigns that are showing people ads for the next 180 days. After they go on the website. And then we've got all sorts of like follow-up email sequences So that it's like, hey, give us your email. We'll send you a 15% off coupon code. And then for 6 emails, we basically educate them why our product is going to help them win the day. So that's one example. Another one is kind of a funny example. The venture capital people or private equity group or whatever that I was just talking about earlier, they were like nervous because they were like, Evan, we were talking about their website, how it's going to look. And they're like, we're nervous that too many people are going to contact us. Like, we don't want that many people to contact us. And I was like, all right, so what you're telling me is that you don't want me to do
enough business.
Yeah, really. I was like, I mean, that was just so funny to me. I just was like, one of the guys' name was Bill. I was like, Bill, you're ridiculous. Like, you want me to build you a beautiful website, but you want me to put no way for them to contact you on the website. You're just like, no way. So people typically hear about them. And this is all part of, it's going to go back to a marketing funnel as an option for people. So like people typically hear about them as a referral. So like that's mainly the way that people hear about them. But they go looking for their website. Mm-hmm. And what the goal of the website is in that point is actually to establish authority, because these people are talking millions. They've managed billions of dollars worth of assets. It's wild. And so the whole goal of their website is to establish trust with the business owner who needs help in that moment. It's not to acquire new customers. It's part of the consideration phase. So that might be different. And honestly, the simple answer is hire somebody who can actually help you grow your marketing. And that's not to say that I'm the only one. There's probably plenty of people out there, but I feel for you, because if I was in that position, I'd be like, how do I know who's the person who can actually grow it? Yep. And also, we don't necessarily guarantee that everything or promise that everything's going to grow your company. We will only work with ones that we're pretty sure or confident we're going to help grow. But it all starts with breaking down brand awareness, consideration, conversion. What do you have currently? How can you aid what's working already? And basically add gas onto the fire. And then you start to open up different opportunities to acquire new traffic, new leads. And honestly, there's a lot of stuff in the sales process that can be increased, or referrals. All that stuff can drive, your bottom line.
So with what you just said, what would you recommend? Because ultimately what I just heard you say was, as you get started working with a client, and as a client starts to work with someone that's going to help them with their marketing, they've got to establish a high level of trust to begin with. So what do you recommend as the first process to kind of start to develop that relationship and build some trust?
The first is that messaging approach. So it's really nailing your messaging down so that your potential customer knows that you're there to help them. And also you're painting a picture of success for them, and also letting them know what's at risk if they don't work with you. So those are all points in the story brand framework that I'm referring to. So I think it starts with the messaging, and then it really goes on to the actual aesthetics. There's a group that we're also working with, and that honestly, their website was just like super rough. And so for the here's what it was. So it is basically a medical group. And so like they sell capital equipment to hospitals. And so you're talking like, I don't know if it's millions of dollars and per contract, but like several hundreds of thousands of dollars per installation. And so, they come to this hospital, and this hospital, they're basically going to be outfitting the entire hospital with medical equipment. Their website was awful. Like their messaging was like, it was okay. It wasn't great. They weren't necessarily the hero, but they didn't really show how they were going to make the customers' lives better. But their branding, like aesthetically, it looked like early 2000s. If like it was just rough. So aesthetics matter, and sometimes we might dismiss them, but really subconsciously, people want to tick that box in their head that these people know what they're doing, and I can trust them with my money. Really,
yeah, I think that's something of interest. So with that, would you say that you typically do that consulting part about helping them with that message? Is that part of the initial, just kind of introductory thing, or is it's just to even see if that's going to get to the process of being able to work with them, or what does that kind of initial meeting look like for you? Yeah.
So, the actual process of helping a company nail down their messaging and really get the 7-part framework. Like we don't teach the framework. You can actually, read the book by Don Miller and learn the framework, but we can help you create your actual messaging. So we can help you, with the nuts and bolts of it. And then we can actually help you implement it. So, but if we're going back to our actual process, so our 3-step process is that initial call. And so that initial call is generally around 30 minutes. That's when I said, we'll get to know your business, more data, numbers. and then look at your goals, and honestly, really just look at what are the things that are blocking you from getting the scale that you want in your company. And I will literally say, hey, here's what I recommend. I think, you should do this, this, and this. I think if you're willing to invest in here, I think it's going to be worth it for you. And so sometimes business owners have to do a little bit more homework because they don't know. Like I was on a call earlier this week, and the guy was like, everybody's asking me what my customer lifetime value is. He's like, I got no idea. He's like, so I got to figure that out. I was like, yep, you totally do. So it's that initial meeting, gives you to understand, and I'll suggest, hey, here's where we should go from here. And then the next step is that we'll present 3 options to based off their budget. And honestly, I try to give them, hey, if you want, here's the bare bones of what we can make sure that this is going to be profitable. Because what we find is even if people will sign on to that initial proposal, whatever that is, that's going to help them pay for the other stuff that they need to do later on. So there's a lot of times that say we'll, do ads, Facebook ads for them. And that will help pay for a new website, or that will help pay for a sales funnel or something like that. So we present them with those 3 options. Generally, they're like 3 pricing options based off, whatever work we're suggesting. One is, it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but here's what you can just start with. And then here's if you want to go all in and put all the chips on the table, here's what that would look like. And then lastly, our team gets results. So we actually do all the execution and implementation. If we're doing the story brand session, it'll be a strategy, and we offer this story brand session and also the strategy session as a separate standalone thing. If that's, they just said, hey, we've got an in-house team, we just need help knowing what to do and how to say it. We offer that as a strategy session, but for the most part, our team is doing done for you services. So we'll actually execute all this stuff for you. Generally, even with websites, we can get all that done in 30 days.
Evan, give us an example of maybe in at as high level as you want or in detail as you want of a client that you worked with that you were able to help them transition their message to a successful response and basically implemented a strategy for them.
Yeah. So one of them went so well, he ended up being a partner. So I ended up joining his company. So I'll go with him. But he's, in my opinion, he's the best fly fishing guide in North Georgia. When we first started, it was just him. Now we've got 4 guides alongside of him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And so when we got together, we were starting off the beginning of, I think it was August or something like that. And we basically completely refined his messaging. We completely rebuilt his website and also implemented an ads campaign. So basically and this is not a fully built out marketing funnel. We're talking just messaging, website, and ads. So that's all we did.
What did you change about his messaging, just from what he was doing versus what you changed it to?
The first messaging was hey, we're the best guy. If you type in fly fishing guides from wherever you live, sure, I can guarantee you every single one of them is we're the best guides. We're the best guides. Yeah. Whatever. It's all about them, the entire page. And that's not to say that you can't type in, you can't put best guide in wherever, because that's what people are going to search.
Sure.
But your entire website shouldn't be that. And so we shifted his message to, we tried 2 different versions. One was the have fun, fly fishing should be fun, not frustrating, because a lot of his clients are really successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. And they go out there to have a good time. And I mean, I'm not an avid fly fisherman. I can fly fish and I do occasionally. But when I go out, it's frustrating because I'm tying knots. I'm getting things tucked in trees. I'm not catching any fish. So
that sounds frustrating.
It is very frustrating. And so I'm the target customer in a lot of ways. And so what we did is we changed the messaging to fly fishing should be fun, not frustrating. And then we had a massive increase of conversions. And honestly, then we started to do other parts of the story brand framework where we add authority by adding testimonials. Sure. We simplify all the messaging. There's so many parts to it besides just positioning yourself as the guide, which, as a fly fishing guide should be really applicable.
Yeah, it's that was an easy one there.
Yeah, totally. But here's the great thing. So his name is Daniel. And he texted me in August. It was you got to catch this. So follow along with me here.
All right.
On the 5th day of August. Okay.
Yeah.
This is by this point. Yeah. We had already become, partners, whatever. So on the 5th day of August, he goes, dude, this is crazy. He goes, this time, or goes, I don't know if I can say this correctly. Basically, so he texted me on the 5th. He goes, today, we've already 4X'd what we did the entire month last year. So
wow.
4X. By the 5th of that month, we'd already 4X'd what he had done the entire year before. Not the entire year before, but the entire month.
Oh, gotcha. So August of the year prior, you had already scaled it 4 times on the 5th day of the month.
Yeah, for that specific one.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it works.
Well,
I mean, figuring out what that message is to translate to people and get them connected is what's going to work.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really cool because if I look at, I won't say this, nuts and bolts because I don't want to give away the competition, but like we're running an advertising campaign right now. And it's just crazy, the cost per lead. I mean, it's nuts. So it's just really, StoryBrand works. And when you have marketing that actually works, it does work. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more than that, because it is something that we have found ways to try to implement in our organization, and I would never say that we're perfect at it, but trying to follow that same philosophy and then see the results from it. So it's definitely something you would want to challenge people on. One other question that I had for you is, because you just alluded to it in your conversation there, is understanding what people are searching for. And I think, just to give you my perspective, I think that a lot of people use that curse of knowledge in trying to define what people are searching for their business. How are you seeing this in your place?
Let's go back to I mean, this is so fresh in my mind. I think we did this session yesterday with these guys. So, forgive me if we keep using them, but the venture capital, private equity guys. So, excuse me, their curse of knowledge and trying to define what the customer actually wanted, it was so hard to get there. I had to ask them 1,000 different ways, but we finally pulled it out. What people wanted is that they wanted to get funding to continue to be successful. That was it. They wanted to get funding to continue to be successful because their customer had already been successful and then run into some sort of scenario where a contract didn't get paid, or they couldn't meet payroll, or like all of their supplies got lost, somehow, and they had to buy new inventory, whatever it was. They were already successful, but they needed like capital, like as quickly as possible in order to cover payroll and to buy new, like more equipment and supplies. So that process to get there was wild. And I'm like laughing because I'm like, y'all are ridiculous because I've worked with you 5 times. It's like, we finally got there, know? But it was like, this is what we started with. We provide unique solutions for companies. Like, what does we provide unique solutions for companies? Well, we underwrite specific things, And I'm like, okay, underwriting, loans. All right, we're getting in somewhere here. But like most people don't understand underwriting. And if you're a frantic business owner and you can't get a loan from a bank, you're not
searching for underwriting.
No, So I'm like, you're looking for lending to continue to be successful. So the process getting there was essentially just, I always say, my 2 filters are, and this is not an insult at all to my wife at all. I promise she would agree with me here. She's actually told me this multiple times. You either need to communicate in a way that a 5th grader can understand. So like somebody who is like, has a low reading level, low understanding, or at least the way that they would say it, or someone like my wife who, when I start talking about business stuff, she's like, I don't care. No, she doesn't care, but like, she has no interest. She read StoryBrand and she was like, I hated reading that book. I was like, why? She goes, it was all about business and marketing. And I was like, why do you hate that? Like, because it's about business. So like, if I can communicate what a company's, that's like my filter. We work with these guys come up. I'm like, all right, babe. So here's what they do. They, provide lending so that companies continue to be successful. Oh yeah, I know what they do. All right, great. Awesome. Like that's the filter to me, is that somebody who has no interest in your product or service can understand what you do. Because
so the secret sauce for your entire business of caffeine marketing is if you can explain it to your wife.
100%. Yeah, that's the filter.
No, I would second that. I remember a couple of years ago, I was giving a presentation or a class, and I was running through it the day before in front of my wife, and was given all this information. And at about midway through, she was like, yeah, it looks great, but what does this word mean? Because it was from a terminology standpoint, it was applicable to carry on through the rest of the presentation. And I was like, it was a realization of, oh, okay, let me define these things first. And so in the marketing side, you don't have the luxury of defining those terms before you present to your potential customer base. So you have to understand that process. But I learned that lesson very intimately because I had to go in and define all those terms so that I could present the information and it actually translate. So I think it's a very, very good way to do that. We've had that conversation here before with several of our trainers. Hey, Can you communicate this to somebody that has no context whatsoever? And then what is the feedback that you get from that? So I think it's definitely a smart filter to use.
That's great. And it's almost like, so like going to her with those is great, but like ultimately you have to be able to memorize it yourself. And because they're doing two things. The human brain is always doing two things. It's looking for information that's going to help them survive and thrive. And then it's also trying to conserve calories. And so what that means is that we have to be super clear in what we're communicating. And it doesn't have to, like, people don't have to burn a lot of calories to understand it. And then also position it in a way that's actually going to help them understand what they, what you do.
Yeah, I love that. Donald Miller uses that phrase all the time. You're making them burn too many calories. It's too difficult. All right, last question for you. What's up with the name Caffeine Marketing?
So for so long, so there's a different name to start with Caffeine Marketing before so I started the company and like makeshift name just to get something on the board. And then I thought about it for months and nothing felt right until finally one day I'm over there drinking my coffee. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, we as entrepreneurs, we're always caught up. Like we were always hustling, always like getting that little extra edge to get to grind it out and make our dreams come true. So I just felt that entrepreneurs, our target market, could really resonate with caffeine.
There you go. But there's a buddy of mine that had a business called Ready at 7. And I asked him the same question, where'd the name come from? And he was like, I'm always up and ready by 7. And I was like, Okay. Well, that's simple enough.
Yes, yeah.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, Evan, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best two ways. So if you're a business owner and you want to work and have marketing that's profitable, go to caffeine.marketing, no.com, just caffeine.marketing. And if you want to connect with me in any way, evanknox.com is the easiest way to do it. I've got an online course too that is basically blueprinted out exactly how we've doubled our company's bottom line revenue every year for the last 3 years. So.
Cool. Very intriguing. Thank you very much for reaching out. It was a great conversation. Wish you the best and definitely stay connected as you go through this process. Hey, Evan, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a blast to have you here. Appreciate you joining us remotely as we're practicing social distancing and trying to be socially responsible as possible. We definitely appreciate you listening and watching. If you are listening to this for the first time, well, let me make you aware we have this on video as well. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Just search for LOC-DOC and you'll find a slew of videos on there. We have several of these podcasts, nearly 80 some, maybe 90 now, out there for you to watch and consume. Lots of content directly related to business ideas, practices, and strategies and how you can implement them. We enjoy sharing this information with our customers and with other folks in our industry and outside of our industry, anybody in the business world. And we're always excited to meet new people and communicate those ideas and share those ideas with you. If you're watching this for the first time and you would like to subscribe on the audio version so that you can get them every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., well, you can do that by visiting us at Loc-Doc.net/podcast. There is a link to all of the podcast platforms that we're listed on, and you can find those there. You can click on it, hit subscribe, and then every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., you'll get the latest episode. We've been doing this for nearly a year and a half now, so lots of episodes for you, lots of topics to talk about and share with you. And if this has been valuable for you in any way, shape, or form, share it with anybody that you think that could find value out of this, and we would definitely appreciate it. Make sure you tag us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're at. Comment on the video below, and we'd love to hear back from you on if this information was valuable and maybe other ways that we can bring value to you as an individual. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time on the Coffee Break Podcast.